Austin, Texas. Young men, athletic, healthy, and just out enjoying a night with friends. Then, suddenly, sometimes after midnight, they separate from the group for just a moment and vanish, only to be found days or weeks later floating dead in Lady Bird Lake. No one has seen them leave or make their way down to the water. No signs of trauma or foul play. No solid suspects or motives. And their wallets, phones, and belongings are still with them. Yet the list of these eerily similar deaths keeps growing. Dozens of them. Authorities call them tragic accidents. But families, locals, and internet forums say it's something else. Could someone be luring these men away from the safety of their friends and well-lit streets, drugging them, targeting them on purpose? Some believe it's organized crime, drugging and robbing unsuspecting victims. Others point to a serial predator, or maybe even a group of them. And with every new body pulled from the murky edge of Lady Bird Lake, the rumors return. And Austin grows more uneasy, and people start looking over their shoulders. And more begin to wonder, is this really just coincidence? And with each death, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Welcome to Deep, Dark, and Scary, where we dive into the most disturbing true crime cases, strange disappearances, tragic deaths, and stories of survival. My name is Jenny, and if you're drawn to stories that just leave you with more questions than answers, you're in the right place here today. I first heard about these mysterious drowning deaths over 10 years ago, and they have haunted me ever since. They just defy logic and defeat common sense. There's something so uniquely chilling about people vanishing without a trace, especially here when it happens in clusters. And what's worse, you hear the same disturbing details over and over and over. And it's not just happening in Austin, Texas. What's truly mind-boggling is that these kind of strange, unexplained cases seem to be happening in specific cities across the US and internationally. But not everywhere. Not every city with bars and rivers and nightlife sees this pattern. And that's what makes it so unsettling. None of it really makes sense. And there have been dozens of deaths linked to Lady Bird Lake. While I won't cover every case in this video, I will highlight a few that truly capture the creepy recurring pattern, and we'll also discuss the very few that may have survived an ordeal like this. In a second part that I'll upload next week, we'll dive into the theories that have circulated online for years. And I'm looking at the real-world obstacles that may explain why so many of these deaths remain unsolved. From how investigations are handled, to what's often missing in toxicology reports, to why these cases often go cold so quickly. And we'll also take a look at the other cities where similar eerie cases have occurred. Places that echo what's been happening around Lady Bird Lake, but thousands of miles away, and sometimes in entirely different parts of the country or even the world. So let's get right into it. This story contains content that may be distressing for some viewers. Life around Lady Bird Lake, Austin, Texas. Lady Bird Lake is a man-made reservoir created in the 1960s on the Colorado River, located right in the heart of Austin, Texas. It's bordered by scenic trails, public parks, and the city's iconic skyline. The lake is named after Lady Bird Johnson, former First Lady of the United States. In the 1970s, she led the transformation of this once neglected shoreline into a thriving public space, adding bike and hike trails, planting native wildflowers, and cleaning up the riverbanks. Today, it's one of Austin's most beloved and popular outdoor destinations. But despite its peaceful surface, swimming is prohibited. The water hides dangerous undercurrents, whirlpools near drainage outlets, and submerged debris. That rule was put in place after a series of drownings, including 2 young sisters who died on Mother's Day, the year the lake opened. Now, the lake is only used for kayaking, paddleboarding, and rowing. Lady Bird Lake is more than just a body of water. It's a central gathering point for locals and tourists, a place for recreation, festivals, and weekend escapes. And it sits at the heart of a city that rarely sleeps. Home to the University of Texas, Austin is both a political center and a cultural hotspot attracting artists, entrepreneurs, students, and free thinkers from around the world. Austin, the capital of Texas, is famous for its Keep Austin Weird motto. It's a place that fuses natural beauty, like Boynton Springs and the lake, with a booming tech scene, vibrant music and festival culture, and a fiercely independent spirit. Downtown Austin, adjacent to the lake, comes alive at night. Three iconic nightlife districts draw massive weekend crowds. 6th Street, often called Dirty Sixth, is Austin's most infamous party strip, lined with dive bars, live music, and wall-to-wall foot traffic. Red River District is gritty and music-centered, home to some of the city's most beloved live venues. And Rainy Street offers a more laid-back vibe, with historic bungalows that have been converted into bars, food trucks, and trendy cocktail lounges, just 1.8 miles from the water's edge. Together, these districts form the heartbeat of Austin's nightlife. And in this very scene, bustling, crowded, and carefree, many of the Lady Bird Lake victims were last seen alive. A pattern of strange disappearances. So what exactly is going on at Lady Bird Lake? Since 2008, a troubling pattern has quietly taken shape in Austin. At least 20 people, mostly young men, have been found dead under suspicious circumstances in or around the lake. And more recently, since July 2022, 12 more bodies have been recovered. The victims are primarily men in their 20s and 30s and are always described the same way: athletic, healthy, intelligent, social, well-liked with strong friend groups and promising lives ahead. The best of the best, all but one have been male. Most were last seen after a night out in downtown Austin. The circumstances surrounding their deaths are disturbingly similar. They disappear after leaving bars or parties, usually alone, often saying they were tired, not feeling well, or just heading home early. That moment of separation is where it begins. Then something happens. Their phones go dark. Texts and calls go unanswered. Just like that, all contact stops. Until days or sometimes weeks later, their bodies are found in Lady Bird Lake, often face down near the shoreline. Most often with no visible injuries, no signs of a struggle, no stolen wallets or evidence of a robbery, and no answers to what happened. Many of these men were last seen near Austin's busiest nightlife areas: 6th Street, Rainy Street, and Red River District, all within walking distance of the lake. Friends usually describe them as only slightly intoxicated and insist that they didn't drink that much. Some families believe their loved ones were drugged, but in most cases, no comprehensive toxicology screening was ever done. Key substances like GHB, commonly used in drug-facilitated crimes, are rarely ever tested for and don't stay in the system for that long. Authorities tend to close these cases quickly, ruling them accidental drownings. The official explanation? The men were drinking, wandered towards the lake, and tragically fell in. But the repeating patterns, the proximity to nightlife, including Rainy Street, which is a 35-minute walk from the water, and the lack of toxicology testing have led many to believe there's more to the story. The similarities between these cases are hard to ignore. Families and community members aren't convinced. Some people believe the victims were placed in the water and their drowning staged to cover up the killings. Others chalk it up to a tragic coincidence: alcohol, poor lighting, and unguarded shorelines. But with every new body pulled from Lady Bird Lake, public fears reignite. Rumors swirl about a serial killer, or even a group of predators, with some online dubbing the unknown culprit the Rainy Street Ripper. There's now a dedicated Facebook group with over 92,000 members sharing theories, tracking new deaths, and demanding answers about what's really happening around Lady Bird Lake. And each time officials urge calm, calling these cases isolated incidents, the results of alcohol, access to water, and fatal missteps, and deny the possibility of the presence of a serial killer in town. But the striking similarities, the profile of the men, the locations, the timelines, the lack of injuries, it all raises questions that don't have simple answers. And that's why many are starting to believe maybe something darker is at play. While there have been many tragic drownings connected to Lady Bird Lake, a few cases and the stories of two survivors stand out, either because of how they unfolded or because of the unanswered questions they left behind. I'll be going through some of the key cases one by one, but I intentionally left out two cases because during my research I found that their family members don't like their deceased loved ones to be mentioned in connection with these theories and a potential killer being out on the loose in Austin. They believe in the official findings and their loved ones' deaths, so I believe in letting these cases rest and giving the family peace because I just get it. So let's get into it. Riad Hamad. May 2008. In April 2008, the body of Riad Hamad, a respected Austin schoolteacher and peace activist who was raised in Lebanon, was found floating in Lady Bird Lake under highly suspicious circumstances. He was very outspoken on political issues in the Middle East that are still conflicts to this very day. And just 2 months prior, the FBI raided his home and took 40 boxes of papers without ever having brought charges against him. He had been reported missing by his wife after not coming home from a pharmacy run 2 days earlier. When his body was discovered, witnesses proclaimed his face was wrapped in duct tape and both his hands and legs were bound, details that immediately sparked public outcry and speculations of foul play. Despite this, Austin police suggested suicide, citing evidence like GPS footage, witness accounts of Hamad's recent distress, and a lack of physical struggle. I mean, how in the world would one even be able to do that themselves? And then, what? Try to wobble over the railing of a bridge and jump in a river? I can't. Although no charges were ever filed, the raid had a devastating effect on Hamad. Colleagues like activist Paul LaRudie later speculated Hamad may have staged his death as a form of political protest. But in Austin's Muslim and activist communities, the idea of suicide was widely rejected, both for religious and personal reasons. To this day, the case remains steeped in uncertainty, and no definitive ruling has satisfied any of the questions that were raised by finding Hamad's body. It's definitely a chilling reminder that not all mysterious deaths in Lady Bird Lake involve young men and nightlife, and not all answers come easily. And I will say, while I personally believe this case may not be connected to the other cases that we're actually talking about because it just doesn't have the weird similarities and patterns, but I did feel like it's important to mention because it may show how police maybe has written even more suspicious cases from all we know off. And maybe more than one person has been using Lady Bird Lake as a dumping ground for their victims. Martin Gutierrez, November 2018. Martin was 25 and not originally from Austin. He was raised in Big Spring, Texas, and had recently moved to the city after graduating from Texas Tech University. He was living with his older brother Mitchell and Mitchell's girlfriend, both former ICU nurses. Martin was described by family as kind, caring, social, and full of energy. He loved working out, meeting people, and making others laugh. On the night of November 19th, 2018, Martin had dinner with Mitchell and his girlfriend before heading out with friends to a few downtown bars. He first stopped at Lustre Pearl, where bank records showed he purchased only one drink. His brother in an interview said he only had 2 drinks that night. The other one he got from a friend he was with. Martin then continued to Alibi next door. That's where things took a strange turn. By the time Martin arrived at Alibi, his behavior had completely changed. And considering it's just right next door, that's insane. His brother recalled he was leaning on the bar, acting differently, like he was drugged. Around 1 a.m., bartenders at Alibi didn't even serve him a drink, noting he appeared intoxicated and was acting strangely. Behavior, Mitchell insists, was completely out of character for Martin. Martin slipped out of the bar unnoticed. His friends believed he had gone to the restroom. Surveillance footage captured him leaving the bar alone around 1:15 a.m. walking south. He was later seen near Holly Street, heading towards I-35 and Lady Bird Lake. In the CCTV footage, he appeared to be dancing or frolicking, a demeanor his brother said didn't resemble him at all even when drinking. His body was discovered 1 week later on Monday, November 26th, near East Riverside Drive, still wearing the same clothes from that night out. The medical examiner ruled his death an accidental drowning, but the findings raised serious questions. A large contusion was found on the back of his head with clear bruising. His brain and chest cavities were swollen, but no skull fractures or internal bleeding were found. His blood alcohol level was not high enough to cause severe impairment. No drugs were detected in the system. However, the medical examiner noted that due to decomposition and time that had passed, substances like GHB or other common date rape drugs could have broken down and gone undetected. Mitchell recalled what an officer told him. Maybe he just fell off the bridge and hit his head in the water. But Mitchell pushed back. You don't bleed if you're dead. And Mitchell is right about that. Bruising occurs when blood vessels are damaged under the skin while the heart is still pumping. This means bruising, like what was found on the back of Martin's head, typically indicates the injury happened while the person was still alive. After death, blood stops circulating, and while minor discoloration or pooling can occur, true bruising doesn't form without active blood flow. He said in an interview, "So he was alive long enough to bleed and create a bruise. So I believe he was harmed and placed in the water. I do believe he was drugged, and I do believe someone harmed him by following him and killing him. I know my brother. I know somebody did something to him. Nothing will change my mind." Martin was a strong swimmer, had no history of seizures, and wasn't on any medication. His wallet and ID were still on him when he was found. Despite all these red flags, Austin police ruled out foul play. But for Mitchell and his family, the questions haven't stopped. "Before this, I wouldn't have thought much about stories like this," Mitchell said. "Now, that's all I think about." In a Facebook page, Mitchell wrote, "I lost my best friend, a void that will never be filled." The Gutierrez family remains convinced that Martin was drugged, stalked, and murdered, and his brother also theorized in another interview that he believes someone could have lured Martin towards the water, asking for help with something, like a tire or whatever, because Martin was such a good and kind person. He would have undoubtedly gone over to a stranger in the middle of the night and in a dark area trying to help them. And the official ruling on his death? Accidental drowning, no foul play, case closed. The case of Randy Lexvold, December 2018. On December 7th, 2018, 48-year-old Randy Lexvold was found dead in Shoal Creek near the 6th Street Bridge in Austin, Texas. The Travis County medical examiner ruled his cause of death as drowning, with blunt force injuries what may have come from a fall, but the official manner of death, undetermined. And to Randy's sister, Lori Faber, that's not just a technicality. It's a sign that something much darker might have happened. Randy's injuries were severe, too severe, she says, to be explained by a simple fall. He had a deep puncture wound to the head, a broken collarbone, ribs shattered on both sides, a fractured thumb, and a badly broken femur. When the family saw his body, one leg was visible, bent out of shape. His lungs were filled with fluid and a frothy substance. To Lori, these injuries suggest something more violent, more intentional. And then there were the inconsistencies. The autopsy report listed the wrong creek. His tattoo was marked on the wrong arm. The medical examiner's signature appeared to be altered. Police didn't notify Randy's parents until 10 days after his body was found, something Lori says added trauma to their grief. Randy had been in town for work and to support his daughter at a swim meet. The last confirmed sighting of him was at a rooftop bar around 10:30 p.m. the night before. A text was sent from his phone at 1:30 a.m., but Lori isn't sure he sent it himself. His body was found a mile away hours later, submerged in the creek. A chilling detail. Near the bridge where Randy Lexvold was found, someone had placed a smiley face sticker with a red slash above the eye, matching the exact spot of Randy's head wound. The smiley face killers is a long-running theory that suggests multiple coordinated killers operating across cities and even state lines. This theory began in 1997 when retired NYPD homicide detective Kevin Gannon started investigating a suspicious drowning at the request of grieving parents. He and fellow NYPD detective Anthony Duard at some point teamed up with Dr. Lee Gilbertson, a professor of criminal justice. They called the group the Smiley Face Killers, named after smiley face graffiti allegedly found near locations where victims' bodies were recovered. Their investigation focused on the exact same, specific victim profile we've been discussing. Gannon and his team believed they were organized murders disguised as accidents. Even more disturbing, Lori also said a GoFundMe memorial page was created 2 days before his death. A coincidence or a clue that Randy was somehow pre-targeted? Despite her pleas, Austin police ruled out foul play. They found no signs of robbery, his valuables were still on him, and the case remained suspended. But Lori hasn't stopped fighting. She believes her brother was drugged, assaulted, and drowned. And she's not alone. She's connected his case to a pattern of young men found dead in bodies of water across the country, cases she believes aren't being investigated deeply enough. To her, Randy was more than a brother. He was a brilliant software engineer, a Christian, a loving father, a triathlete, and someone she shared an unbreakable bond with. And today, she's still seeking answers. Jason John, February 2023. Jason John, known to friends as JJ, was a 30-year-old man originally from New York who had settled in Austin in 2021. He was thriving, recently promoted at work, in a happy relationship, and surrounded by a close-knit community. On the night of February 5th, 2023, Jason was out in Austin's Rainy Street district with friends. He was last seen at Cantina 512, where he had been drinking and socializing. His last text was to his girlfriend about meeting a man who claimed to be a DJ and had given him a business card. Surveillance footage shows Jason leaving the bar alone around 1 a.m., shaking hands with a bouncer on his way out. He was the first in his group to leave, reportedly to check on his dog Ruffle, who was at home. When he never returned, his roommate and friends grew concerned and reported him missing. But Jason's family described the Austin Police Department's initial response as slow and dismissive. Calls went unanswered and they struggled to get information. His loved ones, some flying in from New York and Dubai, and his friends in Austin launched a massive search on their own, with support from the Indian American community and Austin Maratoma Church. The family was also able to get in contact with City Councilman Zohab Zokadri, who eventually intervened, prompting a full-scale police response. 8 days later, on February 13th, Jason's body was found in Lady Bird Lake, near 30 East Avenue, close to where he was last seen. The medical examiner ruled the death an accidental drowning. Jason had alcohol in his system, but no other substances were detected. There were no visible injuries and no signs of trauma, according to the autopsy. But for Jason's family, the conclusion didn't make sense. He had no history of mental illness, no medical conditions, and was not known to swim or go near water. His mother, Elsie John, was adamant. For Jason to go into the water, someone either had to push him, pick him up and throw him, or drug him. In her words, he would never have gone near or into the water willingly. Later, a 911 call placed the night of Jason's disappearance added to the mystery. A Holiday Inn hotel employee called on behalf of Chris Williams, a transient man who claimed to have seen a young man vomiting and stumbling near the lake's edge.
Hi, yes. I had a man just walk in here saying that somebody just fell in the river. He's drenched. I guess he tried to save the person, and I'm in the hotel, Holiday Inn Town Lake. Address? At 620 North. I just bring it back.
Okay, this is the Holiday Inn Town Lake?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where will the patient be located inside the Town Lake? Inside the Holiday Inn?
Right in the lobby. He doesn't think there's somebody in the river right now. The guy that's in front of me is trying to save him. So the guy that needs to be saved, I have no clue.
Okay, can we talk to the guy that jumped in the river?
Yes, hold on a second.
Yes. Sorry, please. My name is Chris Williams.
Chris, tell me exactly what happened.
I'm on the lake trail on the north side of Town Lake, walking down the trail. There's a young man up there about 100 yards away in front of me, puking and stumbling around and puking, had trouble to breathe. He went around in a circle. He went in the tree, was sitting there, and the man just stay there, be calm, I'm coming, nothing to worry about, it's cool, I'm coming, just be still and breathe. And then and he went towards the lake in the darkness, I couldn't see exactly. The next thing I hear is I'm walking, trying to get close to him, I hear a splash in the water, and I look over and I see the splashing. We're about 50 yards away from, maybe 40 yards away from him. I said, man, swim towards my boat. And he was dead in the water, and I knew.
Still in the lake?
Yes. I finally got to him with a long stick, because I didn't want to get dragged down. But I got 6 feet away from him. His head went down from maybe 10 feet the most. When his head went down, my stick was at least 5-6 feet long. I went right over top of where he was, and then as I got closer, I sweat that stick around about 3 or 4 feet deep, thinking he was still about that level. I got right on top of where I believed he was. I slipped around in a circle with the stick, and then finally I tried to go as deep as I could. Going expanding circles, and I couldn't feel him. I figured he'd only been down 30 seconds or so. If he felt my stick, he would have grabbed it. Okay. Yes. I stayed in the water for a minute trying to feel around, find him. I couldn't find him.
What was he wearing? What was he wearing?
I couldn't tell. It looked like a light colored shirt and maybe some shorts or jeans. I couldn't tell from a distance. It was dark down there. All I know is he was vomiting profusely and struggling to walk, stand up.
Did he fall into the water, or did you see him jump into the water? Could you tell?
I did not see him. I did not see him fall, but I was within 50 yards at tops. But it's wooded, so I did. To me, it looked like he was stumbling around trying to keep his balance, so he was moving pretty quickly back and forth.
Okay.
If he was heading towards the bank, where it slopes down a little bit, and he was stumbling pretty fast, he may have landed 5 or 10 feet out into the water.
Okay.
By the time I got to the bank, he was a good 30 feet out.
Okay.
There are no lights on the trails and around the lake, so this area is notoriously dark. The witness told officers on the phone that he couldn't clearly see, and his view was obstructed by trees and brush, and he was around 40 to 50 feet away. He reported then hearing a splash, but never actually seeing the man enter the water. But he did then, shortly after, see the man in the water and attempted to help him using a long stick. But he did try to stay out of the water himself because he thought it was dangerous. Unable to reach him, he ran to the hotel for help and called 911 since he had no mobile phone on him. Despite the prompt 911 call, authorities were unable to locate Jason John immediately that night, and Jason's body was found only a week later. For Jason's family and friends and many others, too many questions remained unanswered. Jason's friend and former roommate Josh Gale was among many who doubted the official explanation. I believe JJ was drugged, and from there a tragic accident happened, or somebody non-violently assaulted him, he said. The early autopsy results show no evidence of defensive wounds, so it appears there wasn't a violent struggle. So I believe he could have been pushed enough to get him in the water, but not enough to leave a bruise. Josh also voiced a broader concern. For this to happen again and again and again, with the same type of thing happening, where it is not happening in other places, makes no sense to me. Do I think there's a Jeffrey Dahmer walking around Austin? No, I do not. But I do think we have in Austin a group of people who want to drug people so they can rob them. And I think some of the people they're drugging are getting away, but falling into a tragic situation because they are under the influence of these drugs. He was also critical of Austin PD handling the case, claiming 4 witnesses were never even interviewed despite offering to speak. Jason's family insisted he was targeted. His life was going so well. A recent promotion, strong personal relationships, and no known struggles. Because of his deep love for the city, they laid his body to rest in Austin and not in New York. Jason John's death was the first in a troubling series of drownings in 2023, where multiple young men would be pulled from the same stretch of Lady Bird Lake in the following months. His case became a turning point for Austin. What were once whispers of concern turned into a community demanding answers. Yet, despite public pressure, authorities found no evidence of foul play, and Jason's case remains officially closed. Clifton Axtell, March 2023. 40-year-old Clifton Axtell was a respected land specialist for a commercial property firm. He was also a father of 2 and a worship leader at his local church. He was last seen on March 5th, dining at Stubbs Barbecue Restaurant in downtown Austin. Days later, his body was discovered in Lady Bird Lake. The cause of death has not been determined. Authorities have not released further details, and the case remains unsolved. Jonathan Honey, April 2023. 33-year-old Jonathan Honey had traveled from Washington, D.C. to Austin to celebrate a friend's bachelor party. On the night of March 31st, he was drinking with friends at a bar on Rainey Street when he reportedly left the group around 2 a.m. to get food from a nearby taco truck. He never returned. Roughly 15 hours later, his body was discovered in Lady Bird Lake, not far from where he was seen last. The death was ruled an accidental drowning. Christopher Hayes Clark, April 2023. In April 2023, 30-year-old Christopher Hayes Clark was found floating in Lady Bird Lake 4 days after he was last seen alive. His body was discovered near the Longhorn Dam, on the east end of the lake. Clark was a father. His former partner, Regan Aparicio, a dental nurse and the mother of his 12-year-old son at the time, believes he was murdered and dumped in the water. She said in an interview, "Oh no, someone put him there. I believe he was dead when he went in the water. We're getting nothing from the detectives, but honestly, I believe they know." Regan says Clark didn't go out drinking often, and that he rarely, if ever, spent time near that part of town. It's a long way from where he lived. There's no surveillance. It's baffling. She, like many other family members of Lady Bird Lake victims, says the police provided little to no information and treated her concerns with indifference. Police are not trying to do anything. They just close the cases and they just deem the death undetermined or a drowning, and then they just move on with no answers, nothing for the families. Despite police reassurances that no foul play was involved, Regan is convinced her son's father was already dead before he entered the water. That sentiment is shared by others who have lost loved ones to the lake as well. She recalled in an interview, "They just closed the case and called it an accident because they didn't know what Chris was doing or why he was found there. I only spoke to them twice and met them once when I begged them to not close the case." A small wooden cross with flowers now marks the shoreline where he was found, and Regan visits the lake daily, searching for answers. Though police ruled the case closed, and despite reassurances that there was no foul play, Regan's anger and frustrations echo the voices of other families affected by these similar deaths. And it raises a larger question. If these are just natural tragic drowning cases caused by intoxication and proximity to water, why aren't similar numbers of young men drowning in other cities with comparable nightlife or river or water access? Do you also feel like something just doesn't sit right here? Case after case, the same set of circumstances and the same unexplained outcomes. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Jeff Jones, a 38-year-old man from Boston, believes he may have narrowly survived an encounter with what some have dubbed the Rainy Street Ripper. In June 2023, Jeff was visiting Austin with friends for a bachelor party. Another bachelor party. The group had dinner at the Iron Cactus, then went bar hopping along 6th Street. Jeff is 6'3" and said he wasn't drinking heavily that night, pacing himself for a weekend-long trip. He later recalled he can't remember anything from mid-dinner onwards. Around 1 a.m., Jeff became somehow separated from his friends and stopped responding to texts, and then his phone went dead. At 4 a.m., an anonymous 911 call reported a man lying motionless at the bottom of the West 6th Street Bridge, which runs over Shoal Creek, a tributary of Lady Bird Lake. Jones was found unconscious, but still alive, just feet from the water. Had he landed in the creek, he most likely would have drowned. Whoever they may be, missed the target and I hit the ground, and luckily, because of that, I didn't drown, he told Daily Mail. I just got lucky. Not many people can say they potentially survived a serial killer, so that's a story I can tell, I guess. The West 6th Street Bridge has raised stone walls that would make it nearly impossible to fall over accidentally. Jeff believes he was drugged and pushed. But if someone was standing next to me, they could have definitely shoved me and flipped me over it. He suffered catastrophic injuries, multiple broken vertebrae, broken ribs, a broken shoulder and elbow, internal injuries to his kidneys, liver, and lungs. His spleen needed to be removed in an emergency surgery. Jeff was rushed to Del Seton Medical Center and underwent surgery shortly after 4:45 a.m. A urine test at 6:59 a.m., just 3 hours after he was found, came back positive for benzodiazepines, the drug family that includes Rohypnol, commonly known as roofies or the date rape drug, often used in incapacitating victims before planned assaults. 1 minute, I was there at the bar, and then everything changed, he said. Jones spent 17 days in the hospital and was placed in 2 medically induced comas. His sister Amy, flying in from New Hampshire, stayed by his side. He later told reporters, "I've thought about it. how he's only alive because he just missed the water, a lot. I couldn't even talk about it for the first couple of months. It was just too terrifying how close I came to being gone. I would have been incapacitated enough to not get myself out of the water. If they wanted to get away with something without being seen, this would be the way to do it. It's a good way to have no trace of what happened. The only lasting effect he had was from a branch puncturing his left elbow in the fall. Had he hit the water, or had he been found later, the drugs in his system may have never been detected. He told the outlet, "I match all of this. I just luckily didn't end up dead. The things that lead to it being a serial killer is that it's a very specific type of victim, which I fit. They don't have anything stolen from them. They drown in the water and they disappear in the middle of the night." Jones doesn't rule out other possibilities, but with a growing list of young men found dead in the water, many under similar conditions, he believes the pattern is real and that law enforcement isn't doing enough. Jeff's case remains one of the very few survival stories of what would have been another young man found dead in the river after a night out, and the only one so far confirmed that a drugging took place, with evidence obtained in time to be tested. Thanks to the anonymous 911 call, for many watching this pattern unfold, Jeff's survival story may be the strongest clue yet and evidence that something more sinister could be happening at Lady Bird Lake and that young men may be systematically and deliberately targeted. Christian Pugh, November 2019. The second known survivor to a night like this is 21-year-old Christian Pugh, who vanished in November 2019 after a night out on Rainy Street. He was last seen on surveillance footage walking east on Davis Street, then south on Rainy until he suddenly disappeared. 2 days later, he was found on the opposite side of the Lady Bird Lake near the Congress Avenue Bridge, barely clinging to life. Pugh had suffered a traumatic brain injury, broken ribs, a dislocated leg, and bruised hands, injuries that left him in a medically induced coma for nearly a month. He eventually had to relearn how to walk and write. Despite the severity of injuries, police labeled the incident a tragic accident, suggesting he had simply fallen. But Pugh's father strongly disagrees, saying the evidence points to an attack, not an accident. And like many others whose loved ones were found in or near Lady Bird Lake, he continues to plead with the city for answers and justice. City response and ongoing safety measures. In the wake of mounting public concern, the city of Austin has taken steps to address safety around Lady Bird Lake and Shoal Creek. They've increased lighting in the area, added fencing near the water's edge, and stationed more park rangers to patrol high-traffic zones. Surveillance efforts have also expanded, with the city exploring the installation of more cameras along the trails. Some families have even called for these trail cams and permanent lighting throughout the entire lake perimeter. One key tool in that effort, halo cameras. These are high-definition surveillance systems used by Austin police to monitor areas with high crime or heavy public activity. Places like downtown, entertainment districts, and local parks. They are meant to enhance safety and aid in investigations. There's also been an effort to work with local bars, asking staff to stop over-serving visibly intoxicated patrons. It's a response not just to drownings, but also to concerns about drink spiking and vulnerability. To that end, in April 2024, the city launched the SIP Safety Program. The initiative promotes public awareness about drink safety and encourages bystanders to look out for one another. Meanwhile, EMTs have been stationed near Rainy Street to help intercept highly intoxicated people before they can walk closer to the lake and fall in. Officials say those EMTs have already prevented multiple close calls. But despite the city's promises, some areas near the water remain poorly lit. You can find people on YouTube going down there at night, and it's still just pitch black. And while the protocols sound promising, whether all these measures become permanent depends on long-term budgeting. I'm not even honestly sure what is going on in Austin right now and if they're still all having these measures. Still, not everyone agrees there's a wider threat. Mark Gillespie, the former forensic director at the Austin Police Department, told KVUE that when APD says there's no foul play, the public should trust that. They've looked thoroughly. But for now, the question remains, are these efforts enough? So what do you think? Aren't these cases just so weird And what do you think is going on in Austin? Are these really just all tragic accidents and a night out gone wrong? I just can't believe it. I mean, it's really hard for me to believe that these are just all accidents and people strangely just keep walking into the water. That just doesn't really make sense to me, no matter how drunk or drugged somebody would be. Like, why would you go to the darkest area you can kind of go to around there? But do you believe there's something darker going on in Austin? And if so, what is it? Please let me know what you think in the comments. Not knowing what is really happening is just so frustrating. And I can't even imagine what the families and friends are going through. Like, what a complete nightmare. I also did a lot of research and digging into the theories and especially forensics of it all, like bodies found in water and what that means to collecting evidence, how drownings are ruled, how GHB and other date rape drugs are tested for, and the issues with that. And some of these findings may just explain why police comes to these conclusions. But this video would have just been way too long otherwise, so I had to split it up in 2 parts. And I will upload that second part next week. It's really interesting, and I think you'd be very surprised by what I found. So until then, stay safe, watch your drinks, and I'll see you next week.